to start on the defensive line this week because I got to tell you, Mason Graham, and I've been singing his praises, and people are starting to wonder, you know what? Okay, is it getting a little weird here with Ballas's infatuation with Mason Graham? But I talked to his dad last year because I said I have never seen a better true freshman defensive tackle than this kid at Michigan, and that was not hyperbole. A kid that had that kind of an impact, and now we're starting to see him take it to another level. And I'm thinking going into that game on Saturday night, they wanted to get him a few reps to see how he played with this big club on his hand because obviously hands are so important on the interior, right?
Yeah.
And instead, this kid comes in with a swim move and he's throwing this big club around like something out of Game of Thrones or something like that on his hand and busting through double teams. Talk about the game he had and how disruptive and how dominant a dominant defensive tackle can completely change the game, because that's exactly what he did on Saturday night.
Well, and let's not minimize for a second. Let's just talk about how difficult it is to play in the interior because you're always playing against two guys, right? In the position that Mason plays, he's either over the nose, he's over the center, or over a guard. He's always drawing some kind of double team, even if for a moment. So he's got to deal with a guard or center coming at him, and maybe if he's playing a wide three, you got tackles as well. And so it's a really difficult position to play because of the angles that his opponents, the offensive line, have on him. And so his handwork is just like anybody in the middle there. It's incredibly important. So take one of your hands away, right? If I just take your hand ballast, your left hand or right hand, and wrap it up in a club and you can't functionally use your fingers and your thumbs, your day is going to be really uncomfortable. But if your livelihood and your performance is dependent on how well you can use both of your hands, and I take one of them away, like he's got with this club on his hand,
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's I guess what I'm saying is unbelievable how effective the kid was missing one of his hands. It reminded me of all the players I've ever watched, going all the way back to when Everett did it years ago. He switched hands because he had an incident with his fingertips there, and so. I don't know how guys can do it and remain as effective as they were. And so for Graham to do that against Minnesota and do some swim moves and make some changes in the way he plays, it obviously freaked out the Minnesota offensive line. They didn't have an answer for him because he's in the making in the gaps and in the backfield making tackles for losses. It's like, wow, this kid's really, really good and obviously really, really tough. Because it's really, really difficult to do things in life in general, let alone play a game that requires you use these so much.
Yeah, and we're talking Jefferson from Fast Times at Ridgemont High stuff here. I mean, this guy is leaping over guys. He got there was some late help, and the guy blocked him right into the quarterback, and the center got some late help, and he just absolutely crushed that kid. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this. And Mozzie Smith was fantastic, first round pick. I can go back to Chris Hutchinson. I can go back to guys like that, and I can single out a ton of guys. Maurice Hurst, obviously, but in terms of stopping the run and now starting to get some pressure, Mason Graham is taking his game to another level. I love watching him play. Congratulations to them, and a great kid to boot. So a lot
Graham
of fun.
does a great job. Jenkins in there continues to disrupt things. I thought Rayshon Benny really made some plays in there too, and occupying offensive linemen as well. Just watching those interior defensive linemen and all of them, I'm like, man, this Minnesota offensive line is just got to be looking at each other like, what do we do with this group?
Right.
They're all really athletic guys moving around, but I thought as a group, obviously Graham stood out because of the return with the injury, but those other guys in there, Jenkins, obviously we know, but Rayshon's one of these kids that I thought would have a breakout year coming into the season, and I saw him make some plays in there, and he looks pretty good too. And that's a big dude running around in there and making plays and getting out on the edge, pursuing the ball. And so the Michigan defensive line, I think we all have these dreams of the years where Hutch and Ajabo would come off the end and torture guys, and that was ideal, perfect conditions for those two in that season a few years back. But this group is doing it in different ways. We may not be taking offensive tackles and throwing them into the quarterback like Hutch did against Ohio State his last game, but they're just as effective in other ways.
Yeah, and Josiah Stewart starting to get there. He was actually the defensive player of the week in the Big Ten 2 weeks ago. I think he had another sack on Saturday, and he's starting to get to the quarterback. This kid from Coastal Carolina back next year. Everybody laments what they lose next year, and I'd like to focus on what they bring back. And when I look at Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham and Josiah Stewart, they're going to do the 1-year fund. Braden McGregor, I don't think was credited for a tackle, but he had 3 pass breakups at the line of scrimmage. This kid has been
That's his
disruptive
specialty
too.
now,
It
Ballas.
is absolutely, and it's
And
every bit as good
yes.
as, you know what, maybe not a sack, but you get him off the field, you know, you get another down, if
Well,
you knock down a pass.
and again, the net impact on the quarterback. So
Yes.
McGregor has done an outstanding job of reading some eyeballs and positioning himself. Again, a really tall, long guy. And now quarterbacks are looking at him. If I'm the quarterback and I'm looking over to my right and I know my route that I want to throw to is over here on my right, and I look over here and I see 17 and he's already batted down one of the footballs or maybe 2 of them. Now it's like, all right, I may have to move to get around him before I can even throw the route I want. And so that has an impact on a quarterback as well. So they all have their specialties. McGregor is really good at getting his hands up and disrupting. And I would say this, almost all the defensive front guys that get into the backfield against these quarterbacks that we're playing, they're doing an outstanding job of getting their hands up and causing pass lane disruptions or vision problems for a quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny little thing that you coach little kids when they first start playing the game. And a lot of guys don't do it anymore. It's a lost art in some ways, and it's really cool to see the Michigan defense bringing it back.
And Mike Elston is one of the reasons for that. This guy is an absolute stud. I remember when we broke the news the night before that, hey, Mike Elston, keep an eye out on this as a potential defensive line hire. Notre Dame fans roasted me. They absolutely killed me. And I said, well, we got a pretty good source here on this one, you know, and maybe somebody connected to the Michigan program that played with him and said, don't give it away yet, but they got a chance. What a steal that was. Mike Elston is an absolute stud and joins an absolute stud coaching staff.